Hello, welcome back. In the previous videos, we have understood about data types, operators, input and output statements. Now, let us understand the importance of control statements, as these are the statements that control or change the flow of execution. A programmer may wish to repeat a group of statements several times, or he may want to directly jump from one statement to another statement. For this purpose, we need control statements. So let's understand about control statements available in Python in detail. So we have understood about data types. We have also seen about operators, because without the help of operators, we cannot make anything in Python programming. Not only in Python programming, if we consider any programming language, operators play a very key role. So we have also seen about input statements and output statements, because we have different formats of print. Okay. Now let's combine all of them and let's make some simple use case. So to understand that, let's take a simple example, because whatever you are seeing on the screen, which is control statements, what are control statements and how are they going to be used in Python, we'll be learning each one of them. But so let's go to practical point. So open your IDLE, just open your IDLE, because as we are comfortable with it, let's go for the interactive mode first, and we'll see whatever changes we are going to learn in this series of videos. Okay. So because in Python, Python is a scripting mode. Whatever we take up, suppose if I take a is equal to 5, right? If you wanted to print the result, what do? You just give print of a, right? Or what do? You can take in any format. Just revising the previous concept. How do you write? You write the string format, the value of a, right? Suppose if you keep comma and keep up a double star 2, that means you are taking the power of it, right? A square, right? The value of a 25. Or if you want to make it more precise, what do? The value of a is, right? You can also use percentile d, right? And you don't use comma here. What do you use? You make a percentile of a. So what happens over there? The value of a is 5. So in this way, we have seen different formats of print. But if you clearly observe, we are going step by step, right? So because Python is a scripting mode where if you make up error at any point, you will be stopped at that point itself, because basically this is called as sequential execution. When we write a program, we execute step by step. So step by step execution is called as sequential execution, because this plays a very key role. When we go for step by step execution point, it is basically called as sequential. So from there, we'll be deriving in, or we'll be going into the next part, where we call them or we make use of control statements, right? So when do you use it? Basically, this is for simple applications, right? You take up a user input, whether to print or anything, you have understood these formats. But in real use cases, it's not the way, right? Where developers want to make sure that they wanted to repeat such kind of blocks, right? Because suppose if you take up an example of a login page, right? You enter into a web page, you give your username and password, automatically they'll ask you to sign up with Gmail or Facebook, right? Yes. Once you sign in up, you need not sign in every time, right? That's where to develop some critical programs, programmers should be able to change the flow of execution according to him, right? So that's where he wanted to repeat. The programmer wanted to repeat a specific blocks of code. Because I am writing in comment, it will be helpful for you to revise at any time. Wants to repeat a specific block or a group of statements. Repeat a group of statements. That's where we need another use case, or we need another approach. That's where we have the concept of control statements. You just relate it to general words. What do you mean by control? Taking the power of it, right? Influencing someone, or you're having control over that subject or control over that thing. The same way, control statements are the statements which control or change the flow of execution. It's simple. Which control or change the flow of execution. That's where these statements are called as control statements. because these are same in C language, and if you go for Java, everywhere it remains same, but we have some different types in Python. We'll be understanding about them each one in detail, because basically the programming flow has been made into two parts, which I have given in the PPT also. It is decision control instructions or repetition control instructions. That's where control statements can be split into two ways. The decision control, how we are trying to take a decision. Decision control, just divide the words. Repetition control, that means you want to repeat a specific group of statements, or he wants to jump into some specific code, whether which editor he can be using, ideally, or he can use PyCharm or Sublime Text, whatever editor it is. He wanted to jump into some specific part. That's where repetition control comes, which are also called as loops. So, in our Python control statements, we'll be starting up with if else, if else, we'll be having for loop, while loop. We'll also work on some break, continue, pass, assert, exception. We have so many of them, because if you remember on the starting classes, I have given you a simple shortcut to see the list of keywords, right? I told you we'll be learning about each one of them in detail, right? Yes, we have break here, which we are going to learn. We also have for, we also have else, elif, we have if, we have from here while. So we'll be using each one of them, because these are the different type of control statements available in Python. And mark my words, if you are aware, if you are good at these 35 keywords, we are able to write up any logic in Python. That's where it will be helpful. So first let me save this shell. Let me save it up with control statements, so it would be easier. Okay, so we'll be learning about if, we'll be learning about if else, and we'll also learn about if, elif. So you just relate that thing to general words. We'll be understanding about repetition controls like for, while, and how we can stop them at specific point. We'll be using break, continue, pass, assert, and there comes a very useful cases called as exceptions, right? So that's where we have some blocks called as try, except, finally, where these play a very key role in executing any piece of code. Whether you take up any application, control statements play a very key role, because they control or change the flow of execution. So programmers mainly rely on them, and if you are good at these things, your programming is done. It all depends on the logic, how we try to take it up, right? Because as I told you, if you are aware of any other programming language, Python is a cakewalk, because in C language also you have all these conditional statements and control statements. But in Python, we don't have any kind of switch case. Even we have else, even we have if, we have elif, for, while, break, continue, pass, assert. We have all of them, but we don't have anything like switch case in Python, where you have in C and Java, but here we don't have. If we are able to use them properly, we can write any piece of code. Okay, so let's start working on each one of them in detail.